Hey, welcome everybody. Episode 33, taking place March 17th, 2025. Just give me a moment here, just trying to get in my program. Oh, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I've already done. For those of you who come regularly to watch,
in a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act.
Amen. So, tonight, we're going to look at some economic numbers that have been taking place and why they are so important. Also, we're going to talk about the reversal at Gitmo. Why are oil prices going down, right? Then I'm going to get into apples and avocados, why trade is great, and why it is better to have free markets decide prices rather than the central planners. The budget. Who's the real hero? And a whole lot more. So let's get into it. I hope everybody's having a great, happy St. Patrick's Day. I got my 1 out of 2 green shirts. I only have 2 green shirts. Well, actually, no, that's wrong. I have 3. And the third one I couldn't find. It had Rat Fink on it, which is the one I wanted to wear. But I have this one on. So I hope everybody's having a good St. Patrick's. So first thing I want to get into is Trump is secretly moving migrants out of Gitmo and back to the U.S. And, again, Newsmax, Fox News, they're not covering this multi-billion-dollar boondoggle, that Trump has created. I understand everybody's all horny for Trump right now and Doge. They're like rock hard for them. But, the truth is, Trump got elected on 2 things. He got elected on the economy, which we're going to get into, the Trump trade, and he got elected on immigration. And so basically this is a very expensive photo op that the taxpayers have paid over $16 million in just the last few months just for the migrants' transportation. That doesn't account for the thousands of officers, security officers and private contractors that come from all sorts of military bases to go down there and house these people. I've seen estimates anywhere from $1.5 to $2 billion we've wasted sending people to Gitmo that are now coming back home. But again, everybody's got their rosy colored glasses on. And again, Congress, just passed a big, beautiful bill according to Trump. He called it a big, beautiful bill. But the bill had no money for border security, no money for moving migrants out. Why? Because the donors don't want it. That's why Congress will not pass a immigration bill. And that's both parties. The Republicans and Democrats are completely sold out to the special interest in Washington, right? And this is why we can't get a decent immigration bill. Look, some of the things Trump did at the border is great. He sent the military over there. He's trying to stop illegal immigration from coming in. But you need Congress, right? You need a real budget for this stuff. You got to stop falling for the fiat government, the central planning. It doesn't work. Here's another example where we've now wasted possibly up to $2 billion sending migrants to Gitmo that are now coming back home, right? What a complete waste of time. And let's not forget, we see nothing on the horizon from Congress. You know, these were the top two issues. It was the economy and migration. You know, and again, when I talk about this stuff, people get mad at me, especially MAGA Republicans. They get so mad at me. Oh, why are you bringing this up? You're helping the Democrats. No, I'm trying to wake you up from the complete nonsense that's going on, right? Whether if you're talking about this ridiculous budget or now sending migrants back home. I mean, this is ridiculous. You know, sending them back to the United States. You know, so I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to start off with that. Hey, Amy, how you doing? I'm glad that you're back on Facebook. Your page has clearly been attacked, like mine, and it's great to see you. You're a good American. We love you over here at Brew Media. But I wanted to talk about Thomas Massie. You know, so we had the budget showdown, and it really wasn't a showdown. I mean, Mike Johnson, the leader of the Republican Party, already had this deal cut with the Democrats. And again, why wouldn't the Democrats vote for it? This bill was literally a copy and paste job from Biden's last bill. Okay, that's all this was. Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. There was a few more $1 billion for defense, meaning it's going to Israel, right? That's where the money's going, right? We already know that. But who did Trump go after? Trump didn't go after Democrats, right? He didn't go after the Democrats. He went after the one guy, the only principled guy who said, hey, Mr. President, I'm here for you. Let's cut the budget now. Let's stop raising the deficit $4 trillion, right? Let's actually do what the American people asked you to do. And Trump came out on Truth and went after Thomas Massie and said, oh, we got to get rid of this guy. Are you kidding me? Thomas Massie was literally the only principled Republican left. And let's not forget who Thomas Massie is. Thomas Massie also was the only conservative that voted all the COVID bills down. He was the only one. And back then, Trump was like, oh, this guy's terrible. We got to get rid of him. Trump tried to get rid of this guy 3 times, couldn't do it. Why? Because the people of Kentucky love Thomas Massie. And, you know, I made a post today telling people, hey, I donated to Thomas Massie. I gave the max, right? What you're able to give. Why? Because he holds a lot of libertarian values. He was right in cutting government. He was right in cutting the deficits. Trump is wrong. And talking about Doge, right? So everybody's like all distracted with Doge. Look at what Doge is doing here and look at what Doge is doing there. Look, what Trump and Mike Johnson just did with this budget was neuter Doge. Doge don't mean shit. It's dog shit, right? If the Congress does not cut spending, right? This budget literally has everything that supposedly Doge found in the budget. So, you got all the headlines, oh, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. But when it came time for Republicans to cut that spending, they didn't. They once again whiffed. And let me say something else. Not only, and so in the debates, I've had a lot of debates. And again, a lot of my MAGA friends, they've abandoned me right now. They're like, you know, clutching their pearls, you know, because they don't want to hear this, but it's the truth. Here's the deal. When people say, oh, Trump just got in office, we got to give him a chance. He's only been in for a couple of months. That's a lie as well. Trump already served 4 years, right? This is Trump's 5th year. In 5 years, 4.5. Trump has never cut the budget. Never. In 4 years. back then when he had Republicans and Democrats controlling Congress. And I remember I voted for Trump. Trump was the last Republican I've ever voted for, was back in 2016. And I was so excited. I said, man, this guy's going to go to Washington. He's going to break up the swamp. He's going to, get the fiscal house in order. And I just watched him, one bill after the other. He would sign them. He wouldn't veto. See, if he vetoed the bill, then it would go back to Congress. Then Congress would have to get 2/3 to override his veto. He would never get it. So it would force a shutdown and force government to cut spending. But we didn't get it. We never got it, right? And all we got were higher deficits, more inflation, more job loss, more prosperity loss, right? So for anybody saying, oh, he's only been in for a few months, no, that's a lie, right? And when they're like, oh, Trump has to clean up 50 years of mess. Well, don't leave out his 4 years of mess, right? And when I turned on Trump was when in his 1.5 years in his first term, when I noticed this man, he was gonna blow the deficits out. He was going to, expand the swamp. And that's exactly what he did. This time is even worse. Think about the people who are around him. All billionaires. He's got I think 8 billionaires in his cabinet alone. The oligarchs have taken over. This is going to be a massive transfer of wealth, right? And so, I called it. I said, during COVID, we're going to see a massive transfer of wealth, possibly the most ever in lifetime. Well, now we're going to see it again, right? Because again, the billionaires are in charge. And I've got nothing against wealthy people. I think it's great to go out, go make a living, and go become prosperous. What I don't like are when people run for government, they say one thing, and they do another. And whether if you talk about flying immigrants back in, voting for this ridiculous bill, signing this ridiculous bill, this is not at all what we voted for. And I can name dozens of things where, right now, Trump just did a strike. He's doing strikes in Yemen, right? Oh, the peaceful president, right? Oh, he's going to bring peace to the world. Bullshit. This guy, he did the same thing in his first term, right? We had the Iraq and Afghanistan war, his whole term. He could have, the second he came in, he could have said, listen, give me, that's right, Ken, I agree with you. Give me an exit strategy out of Iraq and out of Afghanistan. No, instead what he did, he kept them going, right, for as long as he could, right? And then he handed it off to Biden, who then punted the football. And look at how that disaster ended up, right? Same thing with inflation. Trump, under his term, inflation is an expansion of the money supply, right? No other time in history did the Federal Reserve print up more money than during COVID, during Trump's term, right? So a lot of the inflation that Biden had in the first year and a half came directly from Trump. Now, Biden didn't cut spending. Biden kept spending at the same rate Trump did. That's why if you look at Trump's spending and Biden's spending, they're almost exact, right? And now you have Trump literally copying and pasting what Biden just did, adding a little bit more for defense, right? Because Israel's got to get more, right? You can't, if you say no to Israel, you're an anti-Semite, right? That's the charge. I'm un-American. I was called un-American just yesterday. I was called un-American for, I think, bringing up the budget or something. I forget what, there's so many topics. I used to be called a Democrat. I used to be called a liberal. Now I'm called un-American. Because, see, when you tell people the truth and they're so used to being brainwashed, whether if it's on CNN or Fox News, and then you get a guy like me who, I'm not paid by the pharmaceuticals, I don't have lobbyists, right? I don't have people paying for me to say something, right? When Sean Hannity or let's say Anderson Cooper get on TV, right? They're paid actors, right? They're all paid actors. I'm not a paid actor, right? I don't get anything for this. This is an actual donation that I want to share with people, and I hope that I can wake up a few people, and teach people some stuff.
Bobby, Chris Rock here. Sometimes I look at the things people write on your page and I say, are they fucking serious? Fight the good fight, brother.
Thank you. That's right, Amy. I agree with you. And thank you very much. I appreciate that, Amy. Thank you, Chris Rock. You never know who's going to show up here, right? But, so, and it's funny because, right now I have a lot of MAGA people who are trying to silence me because they don't want me to tell the truth about Trump. They hate it. And it's funny because they also ran on free speech, right? But then they attack my show. They attack me. They call me disgusting names. When they can't debate you, right? Then they got to call names, right? They got to throw shade on your name, right? They got to make fun of you and, do all this stuff. But guess what? I'm chugging along. It doesn't bother me. I brush it off. Thank you. But look, I'm a fighter, and I know the people watching this are a fighter as well. So I wanted to go over the markets because we've had some significant drops. The Dow at one point was over 1,000-point loss over the past week. It had a little bounce today around 300 points. Now, I'm old enough. I remember when a 587-point drop was considered a crash. So times have, certainly changed. That was back when the Dow was around 2,800 points. But the big loss was actually in the NASDAQ. There we had a 4% drop. We also got some positive and negative news on tariffs, which is again causing a lot of uncertainty in the economy and markets. Trump said he was going to double the tariffs on aluminum and steel on Canada from 25 to 50%, which is a huge problem for companies like mine that need aluminum. And so I've already, it's like every time I come on, literally, because I order aluminum, and I'm buying in bulk. I'm trying to load up with aluminum because I don't know where this guy's going to take it. I can't run a business based on whatever Trump decides. He wakes up one day pissed off. He could put 100% tariff. Another day he could say, we'll just forget about it. And this is a big reason why we're not going to get companies to move back to the United States. A big problem with our economy is that not only is it because we have more knapsacks on our back, meaning debt, regulations, taxes, right? That's all on our shoulders, right? I was talking to somebody today who, I think was giving a check to the IRS. Or I had to pay my accountant $2,500 today, just for the privilege of filing taxes. That's not his whole bill. That's only part of a bill, right? Of his bill. And the reason why we have to pay so much in business just to file taxes is because of all the rules and regulations, right? And that's government, making things so prohibitive for the American employer, right? And the American employee, right? We have a major disadvantage to our Canadian friends, our Mexican friends, our Chinese friends, right? When we're running our race, our economic race, we have way more knapsacks on our back than those other countries. But nobody's talking about that, right? Everybody's pretending with Doge, right? But we're not actually getting the cuts that we need, right? If Trump wants to bring back the roaring economy that we had back during our Gilded Age, our manufacturing renaissance, what he needs to do is cut government, get those knapsacks off our back. Plus, we need Republicans and Democrats to come together, independents, and make a tax code that doesn't change every time somebody comes in office or out of office, right? We got to make our regulations leveled, right? We can't have one president getting rid of certain regulations and another president putting them on, right? This is why we need Congress. This is why I hate executive orders, right? I don't like them. Even though a lot of the executive orders that Trump did, right, if it's like, getting rid of regulations or something like that, I support that. That's good stuff. The problem is when you don't go through Congress, the next guy can just get rid of them. So if you're overseas, right, and you are thinking about coming to the United States, right? You have any country you can pick, right? You could go to New Zealand, you can go to Sweden, you can go to Hong Kong, right? You go anywhere you want, right? The reason why people pick India over the U.S. or pick Hong Kong over the U.S., right? Or even pick Australia or Brazil over the U.S., right? Has nothing to do with tariffs. It has to do with our regulatory codes and our taxation codes constantly changing. It also has to do with all the knapsacks we have on our back. Look, Trump, what he's trying to do, he's trying to cut taxes, right? And so that sounds good, right? Until you get down to the detail of who's going to pay for this runaway government, right? So if the Republicans are increasing spending, think of spending, right, as a stimulus, right? It's a stimulant, right? When you run deficits, okay, when you're spending money, more money than what the taxes bring in, right? That's a stimulant, right? You're stimulating the economy, right? And so what happens is the economy, just like a drug addict, think of it like methadone, right? You take a little methadone, then you need a little more. It's like heroin, right? You keep needing a bigger shot, right? And then what happens? Eventually, you take too much shot, you overdose the economy, right? Just like your body, right? You overdose your body, you overdose the economy. Same thing. So when Trump is talking about, hey, we're going to cut, these taxes, right, for corporations, right, the income tax, whatever tax it is, whether it's a Social Security tax or the tax on tips, that is only good if he cuts government, right? But in order to cut government, you have to cut these budgets, right? What Doge has done, right, is you're literally spitting in the ocean. Yeah, it sounds good. Look, I am all for cutting government, right? But we got to go through Congress. We got to have Congress come in, do their job, and say, look, the Department of Education, hey, we got to go through here, see what we can get rid of, right? And be more pragmatic about it, right? When the world sees, right, if I'm an investor from overseas and I see a president, whether if it's a Republican or a Democrat, using his pen, right, to just change law like that, you are not going to spend millions of dollars coming to the United States because you have a risk. The risk is when the opposite party comes back into power, right, all of that stuff is going to come back on you, right? But the thing that nobody can run away from, there's two things. Inflation, right? So if you're not paying for government, right, let's say he does these tax cuts, right? Well, somebody's got to pay for the government, right? We just expanded the budget, right? We didn't shrink it. We expanded it. So that's going to go through inflation, right? Because what's got to happen is you got to either borrow the money, right? You got to sell treasuries, right? Or you got to print money. You got to monetize the debt. We're already monetizing a lot of our debt, right? Because again, and now we're in a worse situation because of what Trump has done regarding tariffs, regarding Ukraine, right? We're telling Europe, hey, we're no longer going to defend you, right? So Germany is whipping everything out, saying, okay, great. We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to now start borrowing money from countries that save, right? Because, see, right now, we were the only country out there borrowing, at this alarming rate, right? Because we basically had no competition. Well, now Germany's saying, hey, wait, we're going to start spending trillions of dollars, right? Building up our defenses. And here's the thing. Germany has a much healthier economy, GDP rate, right? But their debt to service ratio is much lower too. So they can afford to offer better rates for their treasuries than we can. If we raise our rates, forget about it. The deficits, they are going to explode, right? This was the risk. This is why, Americans don't understand, when they're like, what makes our dollar worth so much is our military, right? Well, Trump just took that away. Trump's saying, no, we're not going to defend you people anymore. We're not going to help Ukraine unless we get something in return, right? So what's happening is now they're going to do it, right? And so that's going to put downward pressure on the dollar. And we've seen that. And that's what's really inside of these stock market numbers. We also got, so again, tariffs are on, tariffs are off. And every time I call up my broker, I don't know which way, how much more I'm going to spend. I know every time I order more aluminum, it's going up, right? But how much? I don't know. I'm already losing a fortune already because I've already made sales on aluminum that has already gone up in price. I can't call those people back and say, hey, let me get back that money. But, look, not just me. Our company uses a lot of steel and aluminum for cars, planes, homes, commercial buildings, electricity, and many other things that most people don't even think about. So all of those items are going to go up as well. So let's see. Grand Cayman. Again, now here's the thing. As an American, I could take my business, go to New Zealand. I could go to the Cayman Islands. I can go to Sweden. And guess what? My lifestyle wouldn't change a bit. That, you couldn't say that 100 years ago, right? Because America was so far ahead of everybody 100 years ago that we were so far advanced than everyone else, right? But that's not the case anymore, right? You can literally pack a bag and go somewhere else and have a nice quality of life. But think about this. So all those items are going to go up. Also, here's another reason why companies at home like the fact that Trump is raising tariffs. Because guess what? It gets rid of competition. That's another thing. That's not only do my nominal prices go up, but let's say you have a company, you have a factory, and your president puts tariffs, on your competitors' goods that are being imported in. Well, now he's not bringing in that much stuff. So what happens is he stops bringing stuff into the country. Well, guess what happens? I now lost my competitor. I'm going to jack up prices. That's another thing, right? Is that competition is good, right? Republicans used to believe that, right? Trade is good, right? But the reason why you want competition is to help bring down prices, right? Allow the market to decide prices. So anything else going on? Let's see. But later on, I think the selling in the markets cooled off when the news came out that we might be closer to a ceasefire in Ukraine. So the market liked that, which made them come off their lows a few points. But I want to talk about Bitcoin a little bit. Bitcoin, after trading today, catching a $1,300 bid, is down 30% from its all-time highs. So Bitcoin is taking it on the chin. Just in the last week, the Dow is down 3.3%. The QQQ is down 7%, and that's where all the high flyers are located. The Russell 2000 is also down 7.3%. The Russell is the most bear market. It's down almost 17% from its peak. The S&P is down 6.4%. But listen to some of these consensus stocks, which is basically the Trump trade. Tesla, this one is getting killed. Tesla is down 21% in 7 days, and today got clobbered, losing another 12%. So Tesla is now down more than 30% in 8 days. I mean, they're like a whore getting plowed. I mean, so Tesla is also not just a automotive stock, but it's also an AI stock, because the AI part is the self-driving part, but that is part of the Trump trade. Because here's the thinking behind it. The thinking was, hey, you know, Elon's going to be in the White House, and he's going to have the president's ear, and so obviously the government's not going to do anything to hurt Tesla, right? And maybe Tesla will get some, contracts and things from the government. So this is going to be good for Tesla. So a lot of people piled a lot of cash into Tesla after Trump got elected, which turned out to be a colossal mistake for a lot of people. And again, this is another problem with government, right? The fact that we're trading based on like whether or not Elon is in the White House or not, right? It shouldn't matter, right? That stuff shouldn't even matter, right, when you're investing money, right? And the only reason why this is possible is because we know our government is for sale, right? Our politicians in both parties are for sale. You know, I said it on my last show last week that the only reason why libertarians don't win national elections is because we're not paid for, right? Our candidates don't get billionaires, right, to fund us, right? We don't get sponsors on TV and, people like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg to help promote our stuff while throttling down other people's stuff, right? Which again is election interference. So everyone was buying Tesla just like everyone was buying NVIDIA. Well, NVIDIA is also down 15%, in the last week, and just lost another 2.5% today. Again, this is a deep pounding for the deep flyers in the Trump trade. I want to talk about the dollar because I'm like the only guy talking about this. Nobody's talking about the dollar. The dollar index is down 7%, and that's a huge move lower in just the last week. The index is at its lowest since October of last year. So all of the Trump-inspired gains are now gone. They've been completely evaporated with a little extra loss. And a lot of this, and again, everyone on TV, the eggheads, the administration lackeys, and others were all saying that tariffs were going to be great for the dollar. And I was saying, no, they're not. Because part of the reason why so many people thought that the tariffs would be good for the dollar was because people believed that foreigners will pay the tariffs. Well, they were thinking that the imports would go up. So imports would be cheaper because of the currency exchange. And that would offset the tariffs because the dollar would be much stronger. And as a result, we would get these products much cheaper. That was the thinking. However, they were wrong. And I was calling them back out back in January when Trump started screaming about the tariffs. And now that prediction has come true. Again, a lot of my MAGA friends, they'll see this or they won't see this or whatever. They're not going to give me credit for this one. But again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I was right. I said the dollar's going to get pounded, and it is. So what's actually happening is the dollar's going down, and instead of offsetting the pain of the tariffs, they're actually being amplified, which makes the pain even worse. Because now we have to pay even higher prices, not just because of tariffs, because of the loss of purchasing power in the dollar. But what's also important is not just what went down, but I want to talk about what went up. So gold GDX up 5.5% on the week. The GDXJ junior miners, these are all the gold stocks, up 7.2% on the week. Gold rallied for another $40 gain yesterday. We cracked over $3,000, I believe, tonight. When the markets closed, we closed above 3,000. This is the first time in history. Now, CNBC doesn't even mention this. CNBC will mention Bitcoin going above 80,000. But I'm saying, so what? Gold holding above 3,000 is far more significant than Bitcoin having a dead cat bounce to 80,000. The big pump in Bitcoin was the strategic Bitcoin reserve that was being promoted by the crypto president. So check this out, because I like to price things in gold, right? So 1 Bitcoin today buys you 27.7 ounces of gold. At its peak in 2021, Bitcoin bought 36.3 ounces of gold. That means, in terms of gold, Bitcoin has fallen by 24%. So Bitcoin, like real estate, is in a stealth bear market for the past 3.5 years. Again, you're not going to see this on Fox, CNN, CNBC, right? This is where you're going to get the actual financial news and the real news. And here's the real deal with the fake reserve. They aren't going into the market to buy new Bitcoin. What they're going to do is use the Bitcoin that they've already stolen from the American people. This is Bitcoin that has been seized by the IRS. So the hodlers that invest in Bitcoin, like the Bitcoin whales and all the people horny for Bitcoin, the reason why it peaked, it when Trump got elected and it went all the way up to 109,000, was because they're like, oh, this is great. Trump's going to create a reserve for Bitcoin. But once that air came out of that bubble, when Trump basically threw water on that by creating this fake reserve, it destroyed Bitcoin. Bitcoin, went from 109 down to barely 80,000, And so the crypto pump turned into the crypto dump. So what's happening is you have people like Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy. He had to come out on Monday because his stock got killed by 20%, saying that MicroStrategy is going to buy another $21 billion in Bitcoin. But that didn't help Bitcoin because Bitcoin still fell again after he made that announcement. And how is Michael Saylor going to pay for the Bitcoin? He's going to sell more stock. And So I believe, first off, Michael Saylor is not going to achieve this next purchase. And honestly, I'm thinking about shorting this company. I'm thinking it's time for me to short this company. I shorted the housing market in 06. I nailed that one. I might short this one. That's right, Niva. I agree with you. Bitcoin is just a complete farce. And it's a shame that our president got suckered in to the Bitcoin pump and mania. And that's the problem with democracies, is that, you have to play to all these different groups. And Trump was smart. Trump, he's seen the crypto group and he says, hey, that could be the 1 or 2 points I can win. And don't forget, Trump won. He won by 1.5 points. That's it. He won by 1.5 percentage points. But that 1.5 points adds up to a lot when you add in all the states, right? Because he won every swing state, right? Whether if it's by a half a point or a full point, it adds up. So Trump knew, so he played to the crypto community, and he got their votes, and this is now what's happened. I hope that our government doesn't waste our tax dollars buying crypto for a fake reserve, right? Because you're reserving nothing. So I'll keep my eye on that. I'll report on that if anything changes in Congress. Right now, there's no stomach for it in Congress. But again, with the crypto people, though, they've got a lot of money, and we know our Congress is for sale in both parties, and that's what scares me. And what I'm hoping is that not if, but when the crypto market fails, I really hope Trump doesn't bail them out. I hope he doesn't do what he's done in the past, during COVID and all that. I don't want to see our tax dollars bailing out these gamblers, right? Look, you gambled. If you won, that's great. But if you lose, that's great too, right? That's the lesson that you learn, right? Being an idiot, buying, fake digital nonsense. I'm not going to call it gold. It's not, right? It's digital fool's gold. I'm going to add, there's a clip on YouTube. I want to add it to my YouTube, which is a pretty funny little cartoon talking about Bitcoin. But, so anyway, the Canadians decided, so I'm going to get back to trade. So Trump made some really big threats to Canada the other day, or it was last week, because Trump leveled those 25% tariffs on Canada. So the Canadians threatened to put a surcharge of 25% on energy to the United States. And Trump, who basically started this fight, then responded by saying he's going to destroy Canadians' manufacturing, and he even said it's going to be biblical. Well, I don't know how exactly he's going to do that. First of all, a lot of our manufacturing in auto and lumber are stationed in Canada. So actually, we have a lot of our businesses stationed in Canada, right? So, and why are they in Canada, right? They're in Canada because, again, they have less backpacks on their back, right? So when our companies move to Canada or move to Mexico or move to China or India, right, it's not because they hate America, right? No, it's actually the opposite. It's because it's easier to do business there, right? And so, in order for Trump to destroy Canadian manufacturing, he'd have to destroy our own companies. So, that's a lot of, that's Trump, talking tough. But here's the deal. What happens if Trump wakes up tomorrow and goes, I'm going to put 1,000% tariff on everything coming from Canada. Basically, I'm going to seal the border off. What would happen is Canadians would enjoy, first off, more of the stuff that they produce, right? But here's the other thing. They're not going to stop selling their stuff. What they'll do, they're just going to go to the second highest bidder, the third highest bidder, right? Just like when you're selling a home, right? Or a car or something else, right? If the first deal falls through, you go to the second one. You're not, just because the first deal falls through, you don't say, oh, that's it. It's off the market, right? That's not what people do. Same thing with business, right? I sell to Puerto Rico in one of my business. One of my business, I have a foreign exchange. I sell products from America. I export also outside of the country. And so, if I'm selling, let's say, something to Brazil, right? If they don't want to buy my product, I just go to the next buyer, right? I don't just say, oh, that's it, I'm out of business. It doesn't work like that. So I've been saying for years that the stronger countries aren't the countries that just produce a lot of paper or currency. The stronger countries are the countries that actually produce goods. Think about why you go to work. So I was explaining this the other day to my son. I was saying, look, you go to work, right? Not for the money, that you collect at the end of the week, right? What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and stare at the paper? No. Why you go to work is because you want to buy stuff with the money, right? So it's the stuff that you're trying to get, right? It's not the money. The money is secondary, right? What's important is what you could buy with the money. And the thing that's been hurting Americans is that we can't buy what we used to be able to buy, right? Because our purchasing power has been destroyed. So the value isn't the paper, it's the stuff. That's why you're willing to trade paper for stuff. Because the actual paper doesn't do anything for you except pay taxes and buy more stuff. But here's the truth. For decades, both parties, using centralized planning, have destroyed our manufacturing capacity and productivity. And we are once again trying to blame foreigners for our problems that we created ourselves. Again, it's not China's fault that we have 36 trillion on our back, right? It's not China's fault that people like myself, like today, I cut a check for $2,500 for the luxury of having my taxes done, right? And that's not the full payment. That's just one payment, right? Again, that's not China's fault. That's our government's fault. That's Republicans and Democrats' fault for creating the laws that destroy entrepreneurs, right? Destroy your savings, destroy your individual and economic freedoms. What America has been doing is we send them mostly paper, right, in return for their stuff. So we get the benefit of someone else's labor to produce their stuff, and we give them more paper. Who's the winner in that equation? So think about this. China sends us, or Canada, we'll use Canada. Canada sends us a bunch of lumber, right? And maybe we send them whiskey, right? But maybe they send us automotive stuff, right? But what happens is they're sending us more stuff than we send them, right? So what fills the void, right? Because usually when you trade, one trade pays for the other trade. But what's happened is we've become so unproductive that now we send less. So we have to fill the void with something. What do we send? We send cash, right? So what happens is Canada is stuck with a bunch of paper, right? They've invested in the land, human capital, time. They've had to invest in the factories, right? They've had to pollute their land and do all these things, right, to produce us stuff, right? And we didn't send them back anything they can use other than paper, right? And then we tell Canada or China or other countries, oh, we're going to let you take our paper, but you can't buy a home here, or you can't invest, buy a farm, or, we don't want you to, buy anything, but we'll let you buy our debt. We'll let you buy treasuries. That's a terrible deal for them. So that's another reason why I believe our dollar is going to get hit even harder, right? Because again, and I don't know where Republicans went off the rail on this, but, we used to believe in free trade, fair trade, right? We used to believe in, free economic principles, right? I don't have a problem if a Canadian wants to buy my house or my business. That's great, right? He's going to come here. He's going to hire Americans. There's nothing wrong with that, right? What you don't want is for somebody like me to say, bye-bye, I'm going to go move to Canada, and I'm going to take all my resources with me. That's what you don't want, right? But we're kind of pushing people. We're pushing companies out because, again, we've made it so prohibitive for people to, stay here. But again, they're sending us real stuff, and we're giving them boatloads of paper. Again, they've got the worst deal, actually, because again, and not only do we give them the paper, but we're destroying that paper as well through inflation. So I want to talk about apples and avocados. So I'm going to switch and go from America to Mexico. And why trade is great for everyone. Let's say you have two countries, and one country has land that is perfect for apples, and another country that's perfect to grow avocados. Now, if each country tried to grow both apples and avocados, then what would happen is both countries would produce much less of each, because neither country has the perfect environment to grow both apples or avocados. However, when you allow farms in one country to just make the apples and the other country to just make the avocados, then what happens is we have more apples and avocados, right? So as a society, we all do better. And so it becomes a win-win for both countries. Now, both countries have more food to eat. They have more jobs, more money as a result. Everyone's better off. The problem that America has is that when we trade with countries like Mexico, Canada, and China, they ship us loads of avocados and we ship them no apples, right? Our ships might have 2 apples for every 1,000 avocados that they ship in, right? The rest of the boat is filled with paper, right? So instead of Americans shipping apples for their avocados, we give them nothing but paper, which is essentially, and again, all a dollar bill is an IOU, right? That's all it is. In hopes that they can use their dollars in the future, right? So think about this. If China holds our dollars, right? Well, in the past 5 years, right? We've lost over 30% purchasing power. So the dollars that they're holding, right? They're just getting destroyed, right? Meanwhile, we still have the stuff, right? It hasn't left here, right? So we get the stuff. They're getting really trash paper. And so, mind you, they still had to use the land, the human capital, the financial capital that could have been used for more productive stuff for themselves or for other countries, but instead they decided to grow their avocados for us. So we get the stuff that they produce and they get the paper. And not only do we not ship them apples, but we also ask them to vendor finance our economy by loaning us trillions of dollars. The problem is not the foreigners making the avocados. The problem is that we no longer make the apples due to our domestic policies that prohibit people like us from farming. Actually, we have government that pays farmers not to farm, right? I mean, how ridiculous is that? If you look at the whole egg situation, that was government. Government created that whole situation, right? maybe we should look inward versus blaming other countries that have nothing to do with the reason why we can't produce stuff, right? Like apples. And this goes into my... Thank you, Amy. I appreciate you. And this is why I want to get into talking about the free market. And I'm going to leave you with this. So, I wanted to talk about the free market because, I remember when Biden, in his last year, he was, forgiving student loans and doing all this stuff. A lot of central planning. And I was out there, on the internet, saying I don't like price controls. And that's what tariffs are. Whether if you're looking at raising the minimum wage or, deciding what interest rate money should be at or deciding what a tariff should be, all of that is central planning. That's not the market discovering price. Look, the thing about central planning, the thing that I really dislike is that when you go in the market and you say, hey, you can only buy this many eggs, or, you can only buy this much stuff, or maybe there's a storm that comes through and the government says, hey, you cannot raise your prices during a storm. What happens is, let's take hurricanes. So let's say a storm, God forbid, hits North Carolina. And the government has laws in place that say, hey, you can't raise your prices during a storm. Well, what happens is those gas stations end up not opening, right? See, when I grew up and a hurricane came through, right, the stores were still open. Most stores were actually still open. The supermarkets, the gas stations. Why? Because they could set prices to demand, right? Well, what happened was the politicians got in there in both parties and said, hey, you can't charge an extra $3 a gallon for gas or milk, or, you can't raise prices because of a storm. Because, and why did the voters fall for this? Because they think they're going to get something for nothing. So now, so when I was younger and you had a storm, right? You weren't there without water, right? You could have got gas, you could have got food, right? The power came back on, right? It wasn't that big of a deal. Now, when you have a storm, everything's shut down. Nobody's willing to take a risk. Why? What's the benefit for the store owner? Why is he going to ride the storm out if he doesn't get a benefit from that, right? You're going to end up taking all of his resources, right, that are limited. Mind you, every store has limited resources. And so because you took away that incentive, right, for the store owner to risk his life to stay open, right, now you don't have anything. Everything gets closed. Then what happens is now you have the government getting involved, right? Now the government's going to rebuild your home and send you water and send you stuff, right? Now people demand it. They're like, hey, why isn't the government here, to bail me out, and so what happens is, because of this central planning, there's a lot of homeowners that could get homeowners insurance that don't. I know several of them myself. They could get homeowners insurance, but they're like, why would I do that? If I get a storm that comes through, the government's going to bail me out, right? There are people, because of this central planning, that they won't even remove their outdoor furniture when a hurricane is coming. Matter of fact, I remember watching a news channel last year when Helene was coming, and it was coming right up the coast of Florida on the west side, just north of Tampa. And they had a woman on TV. She was at the coast. She had a beautiful home at the coast. And her barbecue was out there. All her lawn furniture was outside. Everything. She didn't move anything. Now, she knew for a week the storm was coming, right? She didn't move her boat. She didn't move her cars. All her stuff downstairs. Matter of fact, they panned the camera around the house. All her stuff on the first floor was still there. Now, 30 years ago, if that was 30 years ago, think back. Those people would have moved everything. Why? Why were people back then, 30 years ago, willing to move their stuff, but people today are like, fuck it, I ain't going to move anything? Because they think they're going to get something for nothing. They think, hey, I could put in a big claim, right? And I could just replace this stuff, right? That's the thinking. And that's what central planning does, is it disrupts stuff, right? And that's why it's so expensive to get insurance. That's why it's so expensive to rebuild a home or, buy, all of the lawn furniture and barbecues. This is why inflation is going through the roof. Why? Because government picks winners and losers, right? Why not let the market decide prices, right? Look, would you not pay more for water and gas if you have a storm come through? Or you have two choices. One choice, the storm comes through and you get the choice to buy water, gas, and food, right, for your family. Yes, it's more money, but you get the chance to get that stuff. Or you have what we have today, where nothing's open and you get no water, food, but prices didn't change, right? Because government forced it, right? I'd rather pay a little more in the free market during a storm than have nothing, right? That's a no-brainer. I'd rather people be more responsible, like where they build a house or, bringing their stuff inside for a storm, right? And not having these ridiculous claims over and over and over again, right? But again, politicians like buying, they like buying voters, right? Oh, we're going to bail you out. We're going to take care of you. Don't worry. Daddy DeSantis is coming, or, Daddy Cuomo, whatever governor you have. They all want to come in as the hero. And of course, the president, whether if it's a Biden or an Obama or a Trump, we're going to come and we're going to have all this federal disaster relief, right? Again, before we did all that, right? What happened? What happened before we had FEMA and all this stuff? Did our country just fall apart when a storm came? No. What happened was private investment. People came together, right? They weren't so nasty to each other, right? They helped their neighbors. They helped rebuild their own homes, right? People had pride in their neighborhood, in their town, right? They didn't just sit there crying for a century, right? No, they didn't need the government to come in and bail them out every time, right? And so that's why I don't like tariffs. I don't like central planning. I don't like minimum wages and stuff like that, because I don't like the government coming in and deciding what's best for me, right? If I hire you and you're an adult and me and you come to a price, why should the government get in the way of that? And why should the government take a piece of that action? What did they do for the money? Again, it's about economic freedom. It's about individual freedom. So look, I wanted to leave you with that. Thank you. I love you all. Look, I'm going to come back on Friday night. I got to skip Wednesday because I have something going on Wednesday. But I love everybody. Thank you guys for coming. Really, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Thank you, guys.